My name's Eric Prosher, and I'm here with a special guest. We're from Jesse Brown VA Medical Center, and this is Michelle Langlois. Today, over the next 25 minutes, we're going to talk to you about this very serious issue, suicide prevention, and what Jesse Brown VA suicide prevention team is doing about it to help our veterans. So please call in with your questions. We have 312-738-1060 is the phone number. So call in. We have our suicide prevention coordinator here to talk about veteran suicide, a public health issue. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Dr. Prosher.
And so why don't you tell us a little bit about your role at Jesse Brown VA Medical Center, located at 820 South Damon Avenue, and a little bit about what Jesse Brown VA is doing to address veteran suicide, and what VA in general is doing across all VA campuses.
So at Jesse Brown, we have a suicide prevention team. We have 3 different suicide prevention coordinators, 2 at Jesse Brown and 1 at our Crown Point Clinic. What we do is we monitor veterans that we consider high risk for suicide and make sure they're getting all that they can get at the VA and for services, and also in the community resources to make sure that we assist them in moving farther along in their treatment so they don't go back to that place where they're having thoughts and contemplating suicide. We do follow up with the Veterans Crisis Line calls. We do outreaches to communicate to community providers about suicide prevention and veteran issues. We do a whole bunch of things.
So one of the things you mentioned is that you follow up on the suicide prevention calls, and
Yes.
The callers at home should know that, suicide prevention, from the VA's perspective, is everyone's concern, and we have a live phone number that you can talk to a live person 24 hours, 7 days a week, and this program's received awards, right?
Yes.
So if a veteran or their family member can call for help, and they can talk to someone at any time of day, 7 days a week, 1-800-273-8255, and press 1 for veterans. And then you get contacted, and you follow up if someone outreaches a call and they connect you to the person to the nearest VA, and if they're in our catchment area, what do you do?
So what happens is the initial call is answered by a team of providers from the VA, mental health providers, and also veterans who answer those initial calls. So they handle all of the calls actually throughout the entire country, and also active duty military. What happens is then after they deal with that initial call, they contact the local suicide prevention team and notify us of the call. So what we do is the very next business day, we make a follow-up call to that veteran. We have 3 days and 3 attempts to try to get a hold of that veteran and make sure they get all the resources that they need for whatever their crisis is. So definitely we want veterans to call if they're having thoughts of suicide, but we want people to call before that. So that's
Right.
why it's called the Veterans Crisis Line.
Right.
So we encourage veterans to call prior to that point so that we can assist them with that crisis so it doesn't worsen and suicidal thoughts develop.
Yeah, okay. So what are some of the tools and resources you give them? I noticed you brought here a little stress ball. I guess you give these out during your outreach events where you're meeting the public and engaging them with the VA services, right?
Yep. So we give out these stress balls. Reducing stress is always a good thing to help prevent suicide. We give out other kinds of items that people could use.
Yeah, what is this right here?
But we also have these cards that have a lot of different resources on there. We have different apps that veterans can use that can help with their mental health care. And we also have resources on the back of the card about the Veterans Crisis Line, about our vet centers, which address our combat veterans. Make the Connection, which is a phenomenal website where you can hear veterans' personal stories, and lots of other resources that they have. So we definitely have lots that we can offer.
Great. And what is this right here?
So right here we have a gun lock. It's a cable lock, and so the VA actually gives out free gun locks to any veterans who own a firearm who needs it secured. No questions asked. We just want to make sure that we have locks on the firearms. We do know that a lot of veterans have firearms, and one of the biggest risks for suicide is having just ownership of a firearm. So we don't necessarily want to remove them from the person completely, but we want to have some kind of barrier and have some kind of lock on the firearm. So we do give these out pretty regularly.
And the rationale behind that, you know, many of our combat veterans do have weapons,
Yes.
and I guess guns are probably the most lethal way of committing suicide.
Yes.
So what's the rationale behind giving gun locks?
Well, if you use a firearm in a suicide attempt, you have about an 85 to 90% chance of death. If you use any other means, you have about a 3 to 5% chance of death. So veterans do have a lot of gun ownership, and that is the most lethal ways towards suicide. So if we can put some kind of barrier in there so that hopefully the veteran will change their mind during a time of crisis if they're reaching for a gun, and having those kinds of thoughts, hopefully we can interrupt that suicide
Yeah.
attempt so that we can save their life.
Yeah, so the thinking is like, during an emotional crisis, a person is a little bit more impulsive, isn't necessarily think very clearly, and any time that allows that person to kind of settle in and engage a part of their brain that is more rational, can be the difference between life and death, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah, I seem to recall a study of folks that had tried to commit suicide off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived, and they had followed these people over 30 years, and 95 or 98% of them were still alive, and one of the most common things that all of them said right after they jumped was that they immediately regretted it.
Yes.
That they wanted to live, you know.
Yes.
And so the thinking is, right, get someone through an emotional crisis, then you know, that doesn't, increases their chances of not being suicidal later.
Correct.
Cool. So this is a VA campaign. Is there anything that VA, you've come on every year in September is Suicide Prevention Month. And those of you who just joined us, you're watching Michelle. This is Michelle Langlois. I'm Eric Prosher, and we are part of Jesse Brown VA Medical Center, and we're talking about suicide prevention. So call in with your questions at 312-738-1060. What type of initiatives is the VA launching with regard to suicide prevention?
So the VA across the nation is doing what we call a Be There campaign, and we just kind of want everybody to do any little thing that they can do to help a veteran. If it's babysitting, if it's so they can go to a medical appointment or just have a break, if it's take them out for coffee, send them a text message.
Well, let's take a look at.
So yeah, there's a video that you can
campaign.
watch and show a little bit of our campaign.
I didn't want to talk. She just sat with me. That was all I really needed.
Do I need to rewind that?
We got back,
That's how it
and of
sounds.
course we went to different cities. One day he called me out of the blue, and it's comforting to know that I always can count on him to have my back.
Well, we hadn't talked for a while, and then she texted me, and we went for a walk.
She called me from time to time. I really didn't think I needed any help.
I was away from my family during the holidays, and a friend invited me to their house for dinner. It really meant a lot.
He knew I was having a rough week, so he asked me to go fishing with him.
My friend knew that I didn't want to go out, so she brought me dinner instead.
It took me from being really depressed to feeling like somebody cared. It gave me some hope. Just that one text.
Be there. Your call, your presence, your words, your support. Be there and help save a life.
All right.
I didn't want to
whoops.
talk.
So it sounds like we have a caller. Great. Hello, caller. We're on veterans issues. We're talking about veteran suicide. What is your question?
Hi, good afternoon or good evening. I don't have a question exactly. What I wanted to talk about was that I worked at the facility with you guys, and the medical center director there, he put out a challenge to staff and to veterans that he meets to put that Veterans Crisis Line into their contact on their phone. So that they
The
can
Veteran
talk
Crisis Line. So that's a great idea. Thank you for that comment. It's really, really important.
You're welcome.
So the challenge from the Mark McGill, our medical center director at Jesse Brown, is that everyone should have the Veteran Crisis Line in their phone contacts. And so if you're watching now, we encourage you to pick up your phone and type in 1-800-273-8255 and press 1 to get to the Veterans Crisis Line. So that's called the Veterans Crisis Line, and you can also text to, and some people, especially the millennials, they prefer that texting. You can text 838-255. Again, thank you for bringing that up. That's really important.
Thank you.
Valerie, not Valerie, Michelle, I'm so sorry. What could you tell us a little bit about that video and what that was about?
So the Be There campaign is the belief is that any little act of kindness, anything that you can do to show some support and kindness to a veteran or a person who's in crisis can really save a life. It can actually make them feel some connection, not feel so alone, especially during that crisis. And so again, people sometimes feel overwhelmed of what they can do. And so this is to kind of show people that if you just have a minute, you can send a text. That only takes a minute. If you have an hour, you can make a phone call and spend some time with the person on the phone. If you have more than that time, you can take them out to lunch and spend time at that point. You can volunteer for a veteran organization. If that's something that you want to do, you can spend a day doing that and do a little bit more time. So there's lots of different things you can do. You can take somebody out for coffee. It doesn't have to be much.
But it's about taking action and connecting with a veteran.
Yes.
It's this is what everyone can do to
Absolutely.
To make the difference. In fact, when I was listening to interviews of people that tried to kill themselves, right before the incidents, they would play games in their head, or not games, but we'd tell them, say, if this person says hi to me, then I won't jump, or something like that, And so a random act of kindness could make the difference between life and death. That's what you're saying, and that's what the campaign's based on.
Absolutely. They know that when people don't feel connected and they don't feel like they belong, that actually can increase their sense of or thoughts of suicide. And so just having that connection can make someone feel that someone cares, that makes them feel that somebody is connecting with them and that they belong. It might not seem like a lot, but it actually goes quite a long way with somebody in crisis, somebody who's not doing very well.
Yes. Okay. We're Jesse Brown, VA. We're talking about our suicide prevention program. September is a suicide prevention month, and we're taking live calls. So please call in with your questions at 312-738-1060. So, what are some other things that are happening at the VA that also? So you said thwarted belongingness kind of is a risk factor for suicidal crises. What are some other things?
Risk factors?
Mm-hmm.
Another big risk factor is people feeling that they're a burden. So a lot of people, because of stigma, are not going to come out right and tell you that they're having thoughts of suicide, but a lot of times they will talk about feeling like a burden. I heard that a lot from our veterans, and so that might be somebody who feels that their life is worth more dead than alive. They feel like they're doing their family or people that love them a favor. And again, when you're feeling in that dark place or having those suicidal thoughts, your way of problem solving and thinking is somewhat impaired. So where we can see, no, of course that's not doing anybody a favor, they can't necessarily process that. So when you pay attention to people or veterans who are having thoughts like thoughts of feeling like a burden, other risk factors can be drugs and alcohol, mental health diagnosis, especially depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorders, can be legal issues of significant losses, loss of housing, loss of a loved one in lots of different ways that can happen, loss of finances. So these are huge life stressors, and these can really trigger people into having thoughts of suicide. So those are loss of physical ability because of certain kind of medical issues or chronic pain. That's a big one with our veterans.
Yes. So loss is tough because it's a part of life, and it's a challenge that everyone experiences in every day in every way. And some type of way, but the VA is there, and we have lots of programs to address all these issues: jobs, housing, medical concerns, and you had pointed out that okay, so thwarted belongingness and perceived burdensomeness have been challenges, and then significant losses and emotional crises make people vulnerable, and that part of doing the gun lock was to kind of slow things down,
Right.
which can be important during emotional crisis. Tell me a little bit about the another program that the VA has to address people that might have too much medication that they don't need, that could potentially be lethal in the wrong context. Oh, but before that, we have a caller. So hello, caller. This is Jesse Brown's Veteran Issues. We're talking about suicide on September's suicide at the end of Suicide Prevention Month. What is your
Hi,
question?
thanks so much for talking about this topic. My question is, if someone does call into the suicide prevention hotline, does that mean that someone would send the police out to the person's home right away?
That's an excellent question. That is an excellent question, because some people might be concerned about the privacy. Like, well, hey, I just want to talk to someone. I don't necessarily want the police at my front door, you know. So so the question is, what happens when someone? What can you expect if someone calls?
Yes, so
in the
that's
crisis
a
line?
wonderful question. It's a question that's come up to me from veterans as well. So what happens is they only will call, so the individual that, we call them the responders from the crisis line will answer the calls and deal with the crisis at hand. Lots and lots of people call because they have suicidal thoughts, and they never ever have the police or the paramedics or the fire department called on them. The only time that usually occurs is when the veteran will not contract for safety. So, for example, they pretty much say they're going to follow through with a suicide attempt. They will not stay safe. And so, again, we're really worried about imminent threat. If the person says that they can get a plan to get to the emergency department, or they can wait till their family member comes home, we definitely respect that, and we do not call the paramedics at that time. But it's only in the circumstances that the veteran will not stay safe, and it's very clear to us that they will not stay safe, that gets to that point. To give you some idea, there's been a couple million calls that have come through the crisis line, hundreds of thousands of texts and instant messages, and I believe as of maybe September of this year, there was about 70-some thousand rescues. So you can see how few rescues there are where we actually have to call 911 compared to how many people actually call into the line.
Wow. Thank you again. What a great question. And also, we're taking comments as well. So you can call us if you have any thoughts about what we've said or questions, 312-738-1060.
And to get back to you, Dr. Prosher, about other things that we do, so we're obviously trying to reduce access to means. The most common way people do die of suicide is with a firearm. The second most common way is actually with overdose. And so what we do realize is that a lot of times doctors will prescribe medications, they'll switch the medications and start on something different, and people start getting a surplus of medications in their home. So what we do at Jesse Brown, we also have a container at the Crown Point Clinic, but we have a MedSafe medication disposal container right in our main hallway, right where people can walk up next to our information desk. So anytime a veteran comes back to their next appointment, they can bring all their extra medications that they're no longer using, and they can dispose of them safely.
Wow. And has that been, do people use that? How popular has that been?
It's becoming more popular. I also know that it's in some of the local pharmacies in the community, like Walgreens and CVS, and I actually recently saw it at one of the suburban police departments.
Oh, nice.
So I think that that's definitely becoming a trend, but definitely please bring in extra medications if you're not using them, and you have a safe way of dispositing them. Get them out of your house.
Okay.
And that can hopefully eliminate more chance of overdosing with a surplus of medication.
Okay. So those of us that are watching at home, we're talking about suicide, veteran suicide, and suicide prevention. We have Michelle Langlois, who is a social worker and one of our suicide prevention coordinators. Who else is working on suicide prevention at Jesse Brown? Hopefully, all the staff are, because that's what you're saying. It's everyone's
Yes.
responsibility. But is there anyone specifically on your team?
Yes, we have Carlos Anchando. He is our other suicide prevention coordinator at Jesse Brown, and we have Angela Tucker, and she is our suicide prevention coordinator that's stationed specifically at the Crown Point Clinic in Indiana. One thing I'd like to mention, though, is right now the statistic is that 20 veterans die by suicide per day. The interesting thing about that number is only 6 actually receive VA health care. 3 in primary care and 3 in mental health care. So what we've realized is that we really cannot kind of tackle and reduce the number of suicide for our veterans unless we all work together. Be there is so we each individually can try to work and help a veteran in need that we might know, but we also are trying to partner with our community providers so that they can work with us as well. If the veterans don't come to us, they come to the community providers so that they can help us as well reduce the
What an
the
important
number.
point. Again, that's why we do this type of show, because we want to have the reach. We want to be able to connect with our community partners and to address such a big issue like 20 veteran suicides a day, especially when 14 of them aren't even coming to the VA. So everyone at home that's watching, it's everyone's responsibility to direct your veteran to the care that they need, or anyone, not just your veteran, but anyone. So suicide doesn't just cut across the veteran population, but I know our younger people and our older white males are vulnerable populations as well for suicide.
And so are female veterans.
And female veterans?
Female veterans is an increased risk as well.
Wow.
So yeah, those are some of the 3 groups that we, tried to target.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, anything else that we should know about upcoming events or activities for suicide prevention?
Well, it's been a really busy month. It is towards the end of the month. However,
Yes.
we are going to possibly try to target some of our female veterans and some of our Facebook campaign. We're discussing that with the female social work, the women's clinic social worker, so that we can see what we can do to address this further throughout the year.
Okay, so check out Jesse Brown's Facebook, Facebook Chicago VA. All right, and then also promised a colleague of mine that I would share. He's been talking about this for a couple months, and I mentioned it, but we hadn't had a flyer up until now. So our addiction treatment program recognizes that addiction is a family disease. Therefore, it's vital that we get everyone involved. And so every Thursday evening from 5:30 to 6:30 in room 8456 in the Damon building, there is a family education evening. So if you have concerns or questions about a loved one that has problems with addictions, if you are interested in learning how to set boundaries or knowing the difference between different treatment approaches, or anything like that, or needed additional help, come to Jesse Brown VA. Call, and you can call and find out more information about this, 312-569-5900, and ask to talk with Dr. Prosher, I think. And stay tuned, because we're going to be back here next month. And if you have any questions for Michelle, you can reach her at 312-569-8009. And stay tuned. Next, we have Fathers Who Care. And we'll be back the next 4th Thursday of the month on veterans issues. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye for now. Thank you, Michelle, for coming on
Thank
and
you, Dr.
sharing
Prosher.
your knowledge.